Hare Krishna. Welcome to our study of the Yoga Sutras. In this session, we are going to discuss Sutras 13 and 14. In the previous session, we saw Patanjali told us how to control these chitta vrittis by the practice and dispassion, abhyasa and vairagya. And in these two sutras, Patanjali is going to elaborate on the characteristics of practice. What is a real definition of practice that is going to take us across to our desired goal? All right, so let us begin. So this is Sutra number 13, which says, Tatra sthitau yatno abhyasaha. Right? Tatra, which means in that attempt towards controlling the chitta vrittis, what is it? Abhyasa? It has to be sthitau. Sthitau yatna. The effort should be fixed. It should be very steady. Right? That's the nature of the abhyasa. Let's see the translation. To be fixed in one continuous effort to restrain the chitta vrittis is called practice. Right? So let us see how the sutra is recited. Tatra sthitau yatno abhyasaha. Right? So in this sutra, Patanjali is giving us a very objective definition of what is practice. He doesn't want anything to be left to the imagination of the reader. Right? So here he is saying practice does not mean any kind of random physical effort or mental effort, but rather practice means it has to be a fixed continuous effort. There has to be some steadiness to the nature of our action. Right? And that is why he's very objectively qualifying what this practice is. Right? And why is Patanjali pushing us towards that steadiness? Right? So like with yoga practice or life itself, we will see it's an uphill task, right? It is such a difficult task to go all the way to the top to reach the zenith at the mountain peak, right? Now, when you're going uphill, there are only two possibilities here. One, either you are going uphill, or two, you're coming downhill. You cannot be peacefully situated midway, right? To think like that is like living in a fool's paradise. Right? So because our practice of spirituality, our yoga practice is also like this, we have to make sure that we remain very steady and the effort has to be put continuously. The moment you stop making effort, you're going to roll down the hill. Right? And this is the important warning that Patanjali is giving us, that you have to be extremely fixed. And that is the most difficult part today. Today we live in a world where there are these weapons of mass distraction all around us, constantly attacking our consciousness, distracting us from all directions. And these distractions have become so part of our lifestyle that we bring in those mentalities even into our spiritual practices. And therefore, even when we are trying to engage in any kind of a regulated practice, I bring in this whole aspect of change. Today people can't watch one video steadily for a long time, for a sufficiently long time. Our attention spans have become so low. And likewise, we cannot remain steady in one spiritual practice. We want to keep mixing and mashing and trying this and trying that. And this is how we end up spoiling the quality of our practice. So Patanjali is therefore warning us right in the beginning. Tatra sthitau yatno abhyasaha. You have to become fixed in that continuous practice. This theme is going to come back again later on in the book, right? So we cannot emphasize this sufficiently, especially in this modern age where our minds are so distracted all the time. This whole multitasking lifestyle that we have taken up actually is very detrimental for our long-term steadiness in our spiritual practices. So how can I make my practice steady? Patanjali is going to give us three important characteristics of such steady practice. Right? What are those three practices? It is explained in Sutra number 14. He says, Sa tu dirgha kala nairantarya satkara sevito dridha bhumihi. Sa tu, which means this practice, right, has to be dirgha kala. For any practice to be called steady, if you have any confusion whether your practice is steady or not, ask yourself these three questions. Is my practice going on for a long time? Is it uninterrupted, Nairantarya? And am I doing it with all earnesty or not? Right? This is the test that we can apply for it. So what does the translation go? This practice becomes firmly grounded by long, uninterrupted and earnest efforts. This is how we can see the translation. Let's now recite the sutra. Satu dirgha kala nairantarya satkara sevito drida bhumihi. Right? So these are three important aspects. Let's throw some more light on these three aspects, starting with dirgha, or how our practice has to go on for a long time. Right? For practice to go on for a long time, why can't we maintain that? As I mentioned earlier, we are always looking for change, right? Especially social media today has made our mind so dumb, right? We can't focus on something for a long time, and because of lack of focus, we become so unsteady in our practice. We lose confidence in our own practice, and we want to keep changing. We don't have faith in our own practice, right? And that pushes us to keep changing our practice, right? And this is where we have to understand whether, in the example of a swimmer, whether the swimmer is swimming in a small tank, in a Olympic size swimming pool, or even if they're crossing the English Channel, all that they do is just the simple left stroke, right stroke, left stroke, right stroke, right? We have to have faith that, look, just by continuing this without changing my practice, I can reach the farthest of the farthest destinations, right? If suddenly the swimmer starts thinking, okay, I'm getting bored with this left stroke, right stroke, is so boring, right? Let me now alter it. Let me try left, 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 and one right. What will happen? We will sink. Our spiritual practice will sink likewise. So we should stop chasing this whole change and variety, right? We need to have that faith that, look, just by being steady in that one long continuous practice, I'm going to reach my goal, right? And because of this whole change, what ends up happening is that we start looking for more width than depth, right? Like in the case of a river, if you increase the width of your net, what will happen is you may perhaps catch more fish. But what use is that fish? Because very soon it is going to rot and leave you with just some foul smell, right? And if you increase the depth of your practice, as you go deeper and deeper in a river, what do you get? You get pearls, you get jewels, you get corals, which have lifelong value, right? So this is how we have to be careful in our pursuits in life. We may think that we may get some temporary titillation, some fulfillment, thinking that, oh, look, I'm doing this, I'm happy today, I'm doing something else, I'm happy today. But all that is going to leave is some foul stench at the end of the day, right? Very soon you will start feeling that hollowness in your own practice. But when you stick to that same practice for sufficiently long time, when you internalize it deeper, when you go into the depth of your practice, you will see that you are discovering those jewels in your practice. And the key to maintain that long duration of practice is the patience aspect. We have to learn, we have to practice this patience, you see. So this is the important aspect. Then the next aspect which Patanjali talks about is remaining Nairantarya. Antara, like a gap, Nairantarya, no gaps, which means uninterrupted practice, right? And this is also another thing. People start something, give it up. Again, start something, give it up. Every year we make a resolution, and by the time in a month or so, we dissolve that resolution. Again, we make a new resolution. We keep going in cycles. As Mark Twain famously once said, it is so easy to give up smoking. I have done it at least 1,000 times. Right? So that is how the nature of our practices. We made so many starts, but we are not able to sustain that practice, right? So this is where we need that goodness, the sattva guna. As we are going in our, it's just like gardening, for example. When you are when you're growing a bunch of roses in your garden, you have to put in that constant maintenance. That effort has to be uninterrupted. It's not that you water one day and leave it for 1 week, or even if you're watering every day, there will be some pests. So you have to constantly put in those efforts. Practice is also like that. There are no breaks in practice. Day in and day out, we have to be putting those efforts in an uninterrupted way, right? This is the key for us. So to develop that, what will help us is determination. You have to be determined in your practice. And it is not that you give up your practice once you become an expert. Practice is something that is like a lifelong effort, right? Whether you are a beginner, whether you are an intermediate practitioner, or even if you become like a super expert, sadhana, the abhyasa, the practice is something that nobody should ever give up. The day you think that, you do not need any practice anymore, then you are deceiving yourself. It's going to turn into a disaster very soon in your life, right? So we have to remain determined and keep this practice going on, nairantariya, relentlessly. We have to keep without any interruption. We have to continue ahead in our spiritual practice. The third characteristic he talks about, very important, right, which is about maintaining that earnesty. While the first two, the long duration and the uninterrupted nature, more, is associated with the quantity of our practice. The last characteristic defines the quality of our practice. We have to put in our entire heart into that efforts. That is what sincerity really means, right? We need to have, for patience and determination to find its completion, this earnesty is very important. And this earnesty, it comes with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm gives life to our spiritual practice, right? Enthusiasm, it is such a powerful force. Even when things are going low, it will help us to rise beyond our mental lows and help us continue our practice, right? And this enthusiasm is not such a easy thing to have, right? The best way to gain this enthusiasm is by surrounding yourself with the company of such like-minded, enthusiastic practitioners. Enthusiasm is a very contagious thing. When you are in the company of such people, that effect induces into you, and that is what will bring in that enthusiasm and that earnesty and that sincerity in your effort, right? And this is also very critical. Now, all these three, patience, determination, enthusiasm, right, they give success in our long-term efforts in any aspect of your life, whether you want to be academically successful or financially successful, career-wise successful, or more importantly, in your own finding your own internal spiritual balance. These three keys are very, very important. It is just like gardening. When you are sowing some seeds, right, it is not that you start digging out the next day and look for the seed and say, oh, have the roots come out, have the saplings come out, right? So we have to have this patience, determination, and enthusiasm to make sure that the seed of our little spiritual endeavors, it finds its roots and it eventually transforms into a very powerful, unshakable tree. And that is the appeal that Patanjali is making in these two sutras, warning all the new practitioners that, look, your efforts have to be very, very steady. And for your practice to become steady, it has to be of these three characteristics. It has to be long, it has to be uninterrupted, and it has to be made with all earnesty and sincerity, right? This is how we become successful in our goal of trying to control the chitta vrittis. In the next sutra, we will discuss a very important aspect of vairagya or dispassion. As scary as it may sound, words like dispassion, detachment, but Patanjali is going to reveal to us that what an empowering state this dispassion can be, and what is the real meaning of the inner meaning of this word dispassion is something that we'll discover in the next sutra. So hope you remain connected. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussions on the Yoga Sutras. See you all again very soon. Hare Krishna.